What up? It's the Reef Man. I was conceived when Bud Green smoked a mega blunt. And now I live in his consciousness as an omniscient being. Pretty fucking dope, right? Now if you don't mind, this is what we call a Reef Man rant. Being a guy who went to a state college to study psychology like a fucking dumbass, I've always been pretty interested in the different ideas presented in the field when they are particularly non-scientific. If it doesn't make sense, then you either the wrong definition of psychology in your mind or you don't care much for the field in the first place. I like the parts of psychology that are not explainable by charts and graphs or fixable with pills and meds, which is sadly what most of the field is focused on in today's day and age, if that makes more sense. Regardless of my opinions on 21st century science, this is my journey through what I would call the manliest version of astrology in recorded history. So yeah, I like psychology, never really read that deep into the original three dons of the field until very recently though. These three original dons are Sigmund Freud, Alfred Adler, and Carl Jung. To sum up the basic ideas of each respectable school, it can be condensed to this. Freud said everything involves sex. The reason human beings continue to exist in society is to basically eventually get laid. Mental illnesses arise from an inability to get laid. Adler said that everything involves power. The reason human beings continue to exist in society is the eventual rise to power. Mental illnesses arises from feelings of inferiority. And Jung said everything involves everything. There is no reason human beings continue to exist in society besides the fact that there is some unknown energy/power willing us all to exist in said society. Basically, the soul/collective consciousness wills us to continue existing. Mental illness arises from the soul's inability to express itself and its wants freely. Freud has some good points, but that guy's ripping below pretty frequently and has some tough ideas to get behind, and he's also a bit of a pretentious douchebag, so wasn't a big fan of him. Adler seemed like the kind of guy you'd find on a Reddit server, also has some good points, but I don't really see the vision in some regards. But for whatever reason, Jung just made sense to me from the beginning. And at this point, I'm 21 years old, I'm still at college, and I found my guy. But this isn't a movie, so I'm just going to skip ahead to a couple years. Circa early 2024, my boss at work had just challenged me to take a real psychedelic trip, not just some, as she called it, weak baby dose of 2.5 grams. So I'll talk about my entire experience and thoughts on psychedelics in another video. I could talk about that shit for hours on end, so no need to clog up the video here. But regardless, I acquire roughly 10 grams of psilocybin magic mushrooms. I take about half, 5.5 grams, and a buddy of mine takes around 2.5, and then we leave the rest for another day. After eating a ridiculous amount of mushrooms for your average psychonaut, an hour goes by and my stomach is rumbling like you wouldn't believe. It was like someone dropped boiling Mountain Dew in my stomach. A couple more minutes go by, I'm full tweak, and a douchier friend of mine tells me, "Have you ever thought about touching your eyeballs?" And I look up at him and his face is basically an oil pastel painting. And not being able to bear the sight of my friend looking like he belongs in the painting of a starry night, I decide to look up from his face into the trees. The best way I could describe what I was seeing is to put it as simply as the branches of the trees seemed to grow and form into an infinity symbol, the sideways 8 we associate with the symbol today. These branches moving in and out of the infinity symbol, almost accelerating the longer I looked at it. I figured it was time to focus on something else and I looked away, but I never forgot what I saw in the tree branches that day. I thought about the worldliness of the symbol itself, like how would my mind create a symbol that in every regard is just a man-made symbol. The symbol itself shouldn't be ingrained in my consciousness or unconsciousness or anything for that matter, so what the fuck was going on here? Fast forward to another year later. 2024 become 2025. I still had no idea what was happening with that infinity symbol or why it appeared that day. I eventually attached it to the belief of reincarnation, that life is infinite, law of thermodynamics, what can be created cannot be destroyed, yada yada yada. But I was never happy with settling for this train of thought. It just seemed too confirming of Eastern philosophies like Buddhism and Hinduism just had it right all along. And that was until I came across a meme I did not understand. I opened my phone to an image stating something along the lines of, when you realize she wasn't the one for you and her archetype conflicted with yours in order to teach you a lesson. I say meme, but I didn't think it was funny or even really understood what the fuck it was saying. But I did recognize the word archetypes from somewhere in Carl Jung's theories of the self. So, like the curious dumbass I am, I looked into Carl Jung's theory of archetypes. Jung believed that humanity operated within a collective consciousness. To make a long story short, think of it as a cloud of experiences that every human being that has ever existed is born with and contains a set of innate traits. To make it even easier, imagine the Fallout Perk tree. with some people having more points in charisma or intelligence, while others having more points in strength and endurance. The collective consciousness is the baseline set of perks. Everyone has some sort of stake in these perks. Eventually, this image appeared on my browser, and I spent some time reading through each individual archetype to see where I fit in. For the sake of whoever is watching this video, I'll explain each archetype quickly. If you think you fit in any of these archetypes, I'd recommend reading into them a little bit more, and you might just learn a little bit more about yourself. The hero exhibits great fortitude, wants to prove their worth through their actions, usually more arrogant than the next person, and similar to Marty McFly, above all things, does not want to be labeled a chicken. The innocent takes a hands-off approach to life, just wants to be happy, maintains a straightforward mindset, but suffers due to their insistence on naive innocence and fears punishment. The explorer wants to be free to not only roam the world, but explore the inner workings of their true selves as well. Strives for authenticity and a sense of journey. In cases where success is not reached, can be seen as wanderers with no clear goal, but still fears conformity and feeling boxed in. The sage. Truth seekers, these individuals are searching for nothing but the answers to an infinite number of questions. They take pride in their intelligence, dreading a miscalculation or being perceived as ignorant. They will frequently fall victim to paralysis by analysis, refraining from acting until a clear decision can be made. The outlaw loves to break the rules for the sake of breaking the rules, seeks redemption against those that has wronged them, fears a feeling of inferiority and commits criminal acts in order to avoid said inferiority. The magician. Reminiscent of the village shaman or your strange neighborhood preacher, they seem to hold some esoteric wisdom regarding the natural order of things, seeking to use their perceived quote-unquote powers for good. Unintended consequences send them into deep reflection, can also openly use their power for evil, often becoming master manipulators and plotting people against one another to obtain their goals. The jester. The embodiment of a YOLO mindset, seeks to live in the moment, just have a good time, and make their environment more fun for those around them. Boredom is their kryptonite, whether it be being bored or boring others. A lack of seriousness and lightheartedness is what keeps their engines running. The lover. Fiends for intimacy and experience, drowns themselves and others to avoid being alone and unloved, will go to great lengths to ensure that they are objectively attractive to those around them. The everyman. Lives by the mantra all people are created equal. Their main goal is to belong in society, but they must destroy a part of themselves in order to do so. But more than anything, they fear being left out. The caregiver. To do unto others as you would do for yourself, they live through the golden rule. Seeks to protect and care for others. Many doctors and nurses can be placed into this category in today's day and age. Their willingness to care can come back to bite them in the ass in the form of external exploitation and a wish for martyrdom. The creator. Nothing is seen as unimaginable in the eyes of the creator. They have a vision and dedicate their lives to see it executed. Mediocrity and poor execution haunt these individuals, leading to an obsession with perfectionism and a need to express their own solutions. The ruler. Believes that the world exists for the sake of power. They seek to create order in a world of chaos. Often associated with the king mindset, they are seen as generational leaders and great things are expected of them. When they internally realize that they cannot live up to these expectations, they fall into a tyrannical mindset or become unable to delegate their subjects. Now that we have the basic attributes of these 12 archetypes, it is necessary to understand that although you may resonate with one specific archetype, it is much more likely that your archetypal composition consists of multiple different types. Jung never really compartmentalized these archetypes into specific groups, so for the next part of our discussion, we're going to turn to Robert Moore and Douglas Gillette, who are psychologists in the school of Jungian thought anyway, so it's basically the same fucking thing. But Moore and Gillette decided to emphasize our former statement regarding people consisting of multiple different archetypes by concentrating these 12 archetypes into 4 major groups, separating each group into lover, magician, king, and warrior. To avoid some copyright bullshit, I made my own diagram of where each archetype fits into its parent group. The lover encapsulates the jester, the lover, and the everyman. The magician encapsulates the outlaw, the magician, and the hero. The warrior encapsulates the innocent, the sage, and the explorer. The king encapsulates the caregiver, the ruler, and the creator. Moore and Gillette explain that each of these major groups exhibit themselves in a level of polarity. Moving too far to one side of the pendulum results in the misuse and misrepresentation of archetypal traits. Now that we have delved a bit deeper into what Jung meant by archetypes, we can return to my personal journey. I found that a lot of my experiences have not made a lot of sense to me, and even in my youth, I could never really quite put my thoughts into order. And that was until I started reading into the magician archetype. It grabbed my attention unlike any other subject I've come across in the past, and I was determined to get to the bottom of what exhibiting magician traits truly looked like. And after a quick Google search, I found that the sigil, the symbol representing the magician archetype, was none other than, yep, you guessed it, the infinity symbol. From that point on, I was hooked. Everything I hated about myself and everything I loved about myself was laid out in front of me like a four-course meal, allowing me to finally get an idea of what has been happening in my life as well as my mind. Realizing the purpose of life was to balance the negative and positive traits of your own personality in order to make your world a better place left me satisfied with my conclusion, but simultaneously left me running for more answers. I knew I couldn't use it as an excuse or even as a form of like confirmation bias, because what would make it different from something like New World astrology? Wouldn't make any sense if I just did something fucking devious and followed up with, oh, I'm just a fucking Scorpio, or I'm just a magician. That's not how it's supposed to fucking work. But that was until I discovered the set of beliefs most commonly associated with the historical interpretation of the magician archetype, and what many people believe to be the groundwork for most of the world's major religions, like Christianity, Judaism, and Islam. That set of beliefs being Hermeticism. To avoid sending my good friend Bud Green through a vortex all at once, this will conclude part 1. For a deeper dive into the set of beliefs that may actually contain the secrets of the laws of the universe, check out part 2. But until then, take a good look at yourself, think back throughout your life. Where are the perk points in your skill tree? Peace the fuck out, Reef Man.